Looking at Trump's recent announcements about $2,000 stimulus checks, there's been a lot of buzz online, but also plenty of confusion about what's actually happening and when Americans might see this money. After reviewing the official statements and cabinet meeting transcripts, here's what you need to know about these proposed tariff dividend checks. The concept originated from President Trump's proposal to distribute approximately $2,000 to middle and lower-income Americans using revenue generated from tariffs. He's mentioned this initiative 7 to 8 times over recent weeks, which suggests this isn't just a passing idea, but something being seriously considered at the highest levels of government. Most notably, during an official cabinet meeting on December 2nd, he discussed giving a dividend to the people while also working to reduce the national debt. What makes this announcement particularly significant is where it was made. This wasn't a campaign rally soundbite or an offhand comment to reporters. This was stated in front of government leaders during an official cabinet meeting, indicating that serious policy discussions are taking place. According to the proposals, the funding would come from tariff revenue, with Trump stating that the United States is collecting trillions of dollars from these tariffs. The math behind the proposal is interesting. Analysts estimate that sending $2,000 checks to eligible Americans would cost approximately $160 billion. If the tariff revenue figures mentioned are accurate, this would represent less than 1% of the total funds being collected. This relatively small percentage of the overall revenue makes the proposal more financially feasible than it might initially appear. So who would actually qualify for these payments? Based on the statements made, these checks would be targeted at Americans making $100,000 or less annually. This income threshold would cover a significant portion of the population, including working families struggling with bills despite full-time employment, seniors living on fixed incomes who are watching their purchasing power decline, veterans facing the same inflationary pressures as everyone else, people with disabilities on fixed government benefits, young workers just starting their careers in an expensive economy, and those who are unemployed or underemployed. The broad demographic reach of this proposal is actually strategically important. When a policy helps such a wide range of Americans across different backgrounds and situations, it tends to generate more political support. This isn't assistance targeted at just one specific group, which often makes legislation easier to pass. However, here's where reality sets in. Despite the enthusiasm around these announcements, actually getting money into people's bank accounts requires a specific legislative process. The president cannot simply authorize payments from the Treasury without congressional approval. A formal bill must be written and introduced in Congress. Then it goes through committee hearings, where it gets debated and potentially amended. After that, both the House of Representatives and the Senate must vote to approve it. Only after passing both chambers can it go to the president's desk for signature. Once signed, the IRS or Treasury Department still needs time to set up the distribution system, verify eligibility, and process payments. This process takes time, and that's frustrating for many Americans who see Congress move quickly on certain issues, but slowly on others. There's understandable frustration when funding for other purposes seems to move at lightning speed, but direct payments to struggling Americans face delays. However, there is some encouraging news. This isn't purely a partisan issue. While Republican support is expected, given that this is a Trump proposal, there's also Democratic interest in direct payments to Americans. The details and framing might differ between parties, but when there's bipartisan recognition that Americans need help, the chances of something actually passing increase significantly. The timeline question is what everyone wants answered. Trump mentioned 2026 as the target year, and we're now approaching that time frame. Does this mean checks could arrive in early 2026? The honest assessment is that even with political will and quick agreement, the process still takes weeks to months. The IRS needs time to set up distribution systems, verify who's eligible, and process millions of payments. Early 2026 is possible if everything moves exceptionally fast. But mid-2026 is more realistic given normal government timelines. A distribution before the end of 2026 would give families financial relief during the holiday season. Anyone claiming to know the exact date is speculating. What we can say is that Trump is actively pushing for this. There's political support from multiple directions, and the funding source has been identified. These are positive indicators, but they don't guarantee a specific timeline. There's actually an even larger vision being discussed beyond just one-time payments. During the same cabinet meeting, Trump suggested that if tariff revenue continues to grow over the next few years, America might be able to drastically reduce or even eliminate income taxes for people making under $100,000. This is an ambitious idea that would fundamentally reshape American tax policy. Some countries operate without income taxes by relying on other revenue sources, and they've managed to create attractive economic environments. If middle and lower income Americans could keep their entire paycheck instead of losing 15 to 25% to taxes, it would effectively be a permanent raise for millions of people. Whether this no-income tax vision is realistic remains debatable and would require extensive analysis and policy development. But the fact that it's being discussed at cabinet-level meetings indicates the administration is considering fundamental changes to how Americans are taxed. While waiting for congressional action, there are practical steps you can take. First, don't plan your budget around money that isn't guaranteed yet. Make financial decisions based on what you actually have today. Second, ensure your information is current with the IRS. If payments do happen, they'll likely use your most recent tax return for eligibility and direct deposit information. So file your taxes on time and keep your address and banking information updated. Third, look into assistance programs that are available right now rather than waiting for something that might come later. There are utility assistance programs, food banks, rental assistance, and other support services operating today that could help immediately. It's also important to stay informed while being careful about sources. There's significant misinformation circulating, with people claiming they know exact dates and details when the reality is that specifics are still being worked out through the legislative process. What's clear is that President Trump has announced his intention to send $2,000 dividend checks to middle and lower-income Americans making $100,000 or less. He's mentioned this repeatedly in official settings. The funding source has been identified as tariff revenue, and there's genuine policy discussion happening at high levels of government. However, it's not a done deal. Congressional approval is required. There's no exact date yet, and anyone promising checks within weeks is guessing. What does exist is momentum, political interest from both parties, and recognition that Americans are struggling with inflation that has made everything from gas to groceries to rent more expensive, while wages haven't kept pace. This story continues to develop, and as concrete legislative action occurs, as bills are introduced, and as real dates emerge, that information will be critical for Americans trying to plan their financial futures.